Welcome to the Narrative Mindset Podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, I would appreciate it if you went back and viewed previous episodes when you get time. Let's take a moment to step away from how we normally see fungi. Forget the moldy bread on your kitchen counter or the strange spots in the bathroom. Today, let's dive deeper, beneath the surface, into a world that's been holding everything together long before we even knew it existed. Fungi and their vast networks of mycelium are not just organisms. They are the secret architects of the ecosystem. They connect trees, recycle nutrients, and quietly sustain life all around us, weaving a web that stretches far beyond what the eye can see. As I stroll through the forest trail, I'm struck by how easily overlooked these hidden networks are. Beneath the leaves and roots, mycelium forms an underground tapestry, carrying messages and nourishment between plants. It's the foundation for biodiversity, a support system that lets forests thrive, fields flourish, and even city parks remain green. In recent years, scientists have discovered that fungi's abilities to go well beyond supporting trees. They're capable of healing contaminated soil, regenerating damaged landscapes, and even influencing our own health. It's humbling to realize that some of the world's most dramatic natural transformations start with these quiet, persistent organisms. I remember reading about mushrooms that spring up where wildfires once raged. Their mycelium gently restoring balance. It made me think, perhaps there's something deeply restorative about the way fungi work. Slow, patient, interconnected. Sometimes, the greatest acts of healing are the ones that happen out of sight, steadily, with no fanfare. Pause for a second and ask yourself, what connections are quietly supporting your own life? Just as mycelium link trees beneath the soil, are there unseen relationships or networks that hold you up in ways you might not notice? I like to imagine that. Just as fungi knit together an ecosystem, our everyday interactions, those small, kind gestures and shared moments, are quietly weaving the fabric of our own worlds. It's surreal to think that nature's hidden patterns mirror the invisible bonds we rely on. Fungi, not the way they usually show up, not as something gross on old bread or something you scrape off the shower wall. In this episode, we're going to talk about fungi as something much bigger than that, something older, something quieter, something that's been holding the world together long before we ever noticed. Because once you really start looking at fungi, you realize they're not just organisms. They're relationships. They're connections. They're networks. They're the hidden architecture underneath almost everything we rely on. Most of the time, we walk on top of them without knowing it. Beneath forests, beneath fields, beneath sidewalks, beneath our own feet. There's a living web down there, stretching for miles, quietly doing the work of life, and we barely acknowledge it. So this episode is about that hidden world, about fungi, about mycelium, and about what happens when you realize that nothing, not trees, not soil, not even us, exists in isolation. What fungi really are. The first thing I had to unlearn in this idea is that fungi are just mushrooms. Mushrooms are the part we see. They're the fruit, the flower, the temporary surface. The real organism is usually mycelium, a network of thread-like structures called hyphae that spread through soil, wood, and organic matter. Think of mushrooms the way you think of apples on a tree. You don't look at an apple and say, that's the tree. You understand it's just the visible part of something much larger. Mycelium is that larger thing. It grows outward, not upward. It doesn't compete the way animals do. It explores, it connects, it fuses, it adapts. It finds nutrients, shares resources, and responds to the environment in ways that still feel almost hidden. Some mycelial networks are thousands of years old. Some cover entire forests. Some are among the largest living organisms on Earth. Bigger than whales, bigger than redwoods, bigger than anything you'd expect from something you never see. And it's all happening quietly. The role of fungi in the ecosystem. Here, where fungi stop being interesting and start being essential. Fungi are nature's recyclers. Without them, the world would choke on its own dead matter. Fallen trees wouldn't decompose. Leaves would pile up endlessly. Nutrients would stay locked away instead of cycling back into life. Fungi break things down so other life can continue. They take death and turn it into possibility. They also form partnerships, especially with plants, through something called mitochondrial relationships. Fungi attach to plant roots and trade nutrients. The plant provides sugars. The fungi provide minerals and water. It's cooperation, not dominance. And through those fungal networks, plants can actually communicate. They can send chemical signals. They can warn each other about pests. They can share resources with struggling neighbors. This is sometimes called the Wood Wide Web. And once you hear that, it's hard not to see the forest differently. You stop seeing individual trees. You start seeing a community. Mycelium as a metaphor. This is where it stopped being biological for me and started being personal. Because mycelium doesn't succeed by standing alone. It succeeds by connecting, by branching, by forming relationships that the whole system becomes stronger. It doesn't rush. It doesn't dominate. It doesn't waste energy trying to be seen. It just spreads patiently, quietly, until it becomes impossible to ignore. And I can't help but think about how different that is from the way we were taught to live. We're told to stand out, to be independent, to hustle, to compete, to brand ourselves like isolated products, interconnected parts of something larger. Fungi don't do that. And yet, without them, everything collapses. Decay is not failure. One of the most important lessons fungi teach us is this: decay isn't the opposite of life, it's part of it. We're uncomfortable with decay. We rush to clean it, hide it, sanitize it. But fungi move straight forward towards it. They specialize in it. They make it useful. What we call rot, they call opportunity. And I think there's something deeply human in that lesson. That breakdown doesn't mean the end. That loss doesn't mean uselessness. That sometimes things have to fall apart before they can be transformed into something new. Fungi don't judge what they consume. They just convert it. I want to stop here for a second because this matters. Nothing about fungi is flashy. Nothing about mycelium is loud. And yet, everything depends on it. That alone should make us pay attention. Survival through cooperation. What gets me about fungi is how uncompetitive they are compared to the way we structure human life. Fungi don't hoard. They don't build empires. They don't extract until collapse. They spread slowly, share resources, and adapt constantly. They understand something we keep forgetting. Systems survive when connections are healthy. If part of the network fails, mycelium reroutes. If nutrients are scarce in one area, they're redistributed. If damage occurs, growth shifts. It's resilient because it's flexible. There's a lesson in that, especially in a world obsessed with independence, self-reliance, and standing alone. Fungi don't survive by isolating. They survive by embedding. And the more I think about that, the more it feels like we're wired backwards. Fungi and death. Fungi are deeply tied to death. And that makes people uncomfortable. They decompose. They break down dead things. They show up after decay begins. Mold, rot, spores. That association stuck. But without fungi, death would pile up. Nothing would return to the soil. Nutrients would lock inside dead matter forever. Life would stall. Fungi are the recyclers of existence. They don't judge what they consume. They don't resist decay. They move straight toward it and turning into something usable again. There's something strangely comforting in that. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is final. Even collapse becomes fuel. The psychological parallel. When I think about mycelium, I think about the parts of ourselves we don't show, the quiet networks, the internal systems, the habits and thoughts that grow underground while we're busy presenting the visible version of ourselves to the world. Burnout doesn't start above ground. Isolation doesn't either. Neither does healing. Those things begin in the unseen layers, the connections we maintain, the support systems we neglect, the mental soil we're growing in. Fungi remind me that growth isn't always vertical. Sometimes it's lateral. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes nothing looks different on the surface, but everything is changing underneath. The part we confuse: mushrooms versus fungi. Most people think fungi are mushrooms. That's understandable. Mushrooms are the only part that announces themselves. They pop up overnight. They look strange, and then they disappear. But mushrooms are just the reproductive structures. They're the surface event, not the story. The real organisms is the mycelium underneath. thin thread-like filaments spreading through soil, wood, leaf litter, and even stone. If you ever pulled apart a rotting log and seen white fibers running through it, that wasn't decay starting. That was life already at work. Mushrooms are temporary. Mycelium is patient. And that distinction matters because it changes how you think about growth. Most of the work happens where nobody sees it. Species diversity, more than we can track. There are millions of fungal species. We've only identified a fraction of them. Some estimates say we've named less than 10%. That means the majority of fungi on this planet exist without us knowing what they do, how they behave, or how they interact with everything else. Some fungi glow in the dark. Some survive extreme radiation. Some manipulate insect behavior. Some live inside plants their entire lives without causing harm. There are fungi that infect ants, take control of their nervous system, and force them to climb to specific heights before killing them, all to optimize spore dispersal. There are fungi that live peacefully inside roots for centuries. There are fungi that break down oil spills and toxic waste. They're not one thing, they're a strategy. The anatomy, simple but effective. Fungi don't have organs like animals. They don't have leaves or stems like plants. Their bodies are built for surface area, not structure. The hyphae, those tiny filaments, are microscopic tubes. Inside them, nutrients flow freely. There's no central brain, no command center. Decision-making happens locally, moment by moment, on conditions. If food is here, grow here. If danger is there, move away. If resistance increases, branch. It's decentralized intelligence. That's why mycelium is so resilient. There's no single point of failure. You can't cut it in half and both halves keep growing. You can destroy one area and the rest adapts. It survives not by being strong, but by being distributed. Spores travel without movement. Fungi don't walk. They don't hunt. They don't chase. They release spores. A single mushroom can release billions of spores into the air. These spores are microscopic, light enough to travel on wind currents, water droplets, animals, even human breath. Most spores fail. That's part of the design. Fungi don't rely on certainty. They rely on probability. Spread wide, wait, see what lands. And when conditions are right, moisture, temperature, nutrients, growth begins quietly. There's something humbling about that strategy. No forcing, no rushing, just readiness. Survival strategies. Fungi are masters of survival because they don't fight their environment. They integrate with it. When conditions are harsh, they go dormant. When food is scarce, they slow down. When toxins appear, some species neutralize them. Certain fungi can survive freezing. Others survive fire. Some can remain inactive for years, even decades, waiting for the right moment to return. They don't panic. They pause. That's not weakness. That's timing. Why this matters. When I think about fungi biology, what stands out isn't how alien they are. It's how opposite they are to how we're taught to live. We're told to specialize, They diversify. We're told to centralize control. They distribute intelligence. We're told to be visible, to be valuable. They do most of their important work unseen. Fungi don't rush outcomes. They build conditions. And that feels like something we've forgotten how to do. Ecological importance. The hidden network, the role fungi play in the world. If fungi disappeared tomorrow, the world wouldn't just feel different. It would stop working. Plants would choke on their own waste. Forests would drown in dead matter. Nutrients would stay locked away, unusable, piling up instead of cycling forward. Life wouldn't end dramatically, it would stall. Fungi are nature's recyclers, but that word doesn't fully explain what they do. Recycling implies cleanup after the fact. Fungi are involved during life, after death, and between generations. They break things down, yes, but they also make things possible. When a leaf falls to the forest floor, it doesn't just rot on its own. Fungi move in. They digest cellulose and lignin, materials most organisms can't touch. As they feed, they release nutrients back into the soil and forms plants can actually absorb. Without fungi, soil becomes sterile. With fungi, soil becomes alive. Mitochondrial networks, the underground connection. One of the most important roles fungi play is something people are only recently beginning to understand. They connect plants to each other. Certain fungi form partnerships with plant roots. They're called mycorrhizal relationships. The fungus wraps itself around or inside the root, extending far beyond where roots alone could reach. The plant gives the fungus sugars made from photosynthesis. The fungus gives the plant water, minerals, and protection. But it goes further than that. Through these fungal networks, plants can share nutrients. Stronger plants can send resources to weaker ones. Trees can support seedlings growing in the shade. Warning signals can travel when pests or disease appear. This underground system is sometimes called the wood wide web. Forests aren't just collections of individual trees. They're communities, and fungi are infrastructure. Fungi as food, supporting the food chain.